Hey guys, welcome into another episode of From the Wing. I am Christian Clark, the Pelicans beat writer for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, a special Sunday morning episode of From the Wing. That is because the Pelicans made a pretty big move on Friday, trading for Dejounte Murray. The Pelicans sent out Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, EJ Liddell, two future first-round picks, and got back a lead guard, something they badly needed to add to this roster. I never have to go on a New Orleans local radio show again and hear, what are they going to do about the point guard? The Pelicans have found a point guard, which they needed, a lead, which they needed. Dejounte Murray, 6'5", one-time All-Star, really nice year with the Spurs. His 2 years with the Hawks were productive, but weird next to Trae Young, and now he is a New Orleans Pelican, and it looks like he's excited to be a New Orleans Pelican. He threw up a tweet on Friday night with the sunglasses emoji, said hashtag 504.
We call that in pro wrestling, you call that cheap pop. It's really, really easy to win people over. All you got to do is you walk into a wrestling arena, they announce the guy and he walks in and it's like Cleveland. He walks in and like, hello, Cleveland. And Cleveland, yeah, that's what that was. That's he posted a story and a tweet and it just said 504. It literally didn't say anything. It just said 504. And we're like, oh my God, he loves us. He loves us. I can't wait. This is awesome. They mainly awesome because of what they didn't send out. I had never had an arrangement of this in my mind that did not have somebody important going out. And I say important, it's kind of a dismissal of Dyson. You heard me all last year. I think Dyson's got a long road because I think there's a fundamental confidence issue. I think he's an awesome defender, but don't send BI, get Dejounte Murray, have the lead guard. He's huge. We've watched ourselves get pushed off the three-point line, off the ball in pressure situations. We can't split doubles. We can't get out of traps. That guy can. So that's the exciting part is like, you do have a guy that in those pressure situations, we're not like trying to cobble together ball handling between like Herb and Najee and a little bit and too much of Zion. Now there's a guy that can spend a lot of time on ball and you can feel great about it.
That's right. Why did the Pelicans have what was statistically one of the worst offensive performances from a playoff team in the past decade? Because Zion wasn't there, and they kept giving the ball to Brandon, and he was coming back from injury, and he also just struggled against Lou Dort. I mean, it was Bi and Lou Dort at the point of attack, and Bi could consistently not get by Lou Dort off the dribble, and that just gummed up the Pelicans' offense. It made it extremely ugly. And now this is a guy you plug in where it's like you just give him the ball at the top of the key. You run a pick and roll. You ask him to, start a possession by creating a small advantage, and he can do that. Dejounte Murray fills this role. The Pelicans, I think there was like multiple data points of their offense just being flaming hot garbage without Zion over the past 2 seasons, where they looked at it and like, look, we've tried this point guard by committee thing. We've ran out a lot of point Zion. The point Zion stuff works sometimes, but we need a true point guard in here. CJ McCollum, I think last year was proof that he is best at an off-ball role. He was very good, but it just doesn't look great when CJ is the one, with the rock in his hands on a lot of these possessions. So I think they needed to address this spot, and I agree with you. It was a win for them to be able to bring Dejounte in without having to send BI out, and now their options are extend BI at, if they want to do that, I would anticipate it being at his below max value or focus on trading him and use that to address the starting center spot and just focus on getting a really good return and not having the pressure of like, if we send him out, we know we have to get a lead guard back.
Yeah. And I think, we can speculate about which position this is going to be. Obviously, like just to reorient people that are listening, Christian is the reporter. I am the fan. I am the guy that is being a nerd and listening to every single podcast, reading every tweet and every story I can to try and piece together what the market feels like. And on its face, like I'm listening to every clip on a national level and I'm hearing like a lot of respect for BI, but I have not heard a single sentence that says will resign, will stay. It's a lot of, we really like each other. We would love this to work out. Economic realities. Oh, and Dejounte Murray has a lot of overlap with BI and how they play. I do not believe that any NBA intelligent person, including the staff of the New Orleans Pelicans, believes that Brandon Ingram and Dejounte Murray are going to play together well. So Brandon's a lot of salary, a lot of 1 year salary, but a lot of salary. It does at least sound, the picture that we get publicly, and I don't know if this is true behind the scenes, but the picture that we have gotten publicly over the last 2 days is that BI and Griff are kind of in lockstep on this. Like, they sound like they're trying to find a solution together, which is kind of cool because it means like all the posturing stuff we're hearing, like, is kind of honest. Like,
Those two guys actually like each other. Like, I think it's pretty real. Griff really likes BI, and I think BI, has some respect and trust for Griff. And I agree with you. It's not an unhappy marriage, but if I had to make a prediction, it's probably a marriage that's about to come to an end. It's a conscious uncoupling, Adam.
we're going to therapy, guys. It's a conscious choice. We're deciding what's best for the kids, and we got to decide what's best for the kids. Yeah, this is like everything basketball wise points to BI not being here. The question then shifts to, a lot of the iterations we thought of are like now no longer in play because we had that guard thing in our heads this whole time. Like, what are they going to do at guard? Well, the guard thing is gone. Now the question in a BI move is, I still have a gaping hole at the 5 spot. I probably would like to get some draft capital back for BI as well. And it's going to be curious to see what centers out there are available. And do they come via the BI trade? Do they come via a 3-teamer where we get stuff for BI and then redirect it to get a guy that we're happy with? Very, very interesting stuff. And then you got guys now like Kevon Looney and things that have a lot of experience playing in a system like the one we run. And you wonder, like, are those guys, is that somebody that's like a potential market target for us? Because there shouldn't be huge numbers out there for Kevon, or like a Goga or whatever, like that first or second slot. Like, what do you do? What comes of BI? But I am still in the camp of, I just don't see a way, unless everything goes like terribly and he has to take a lower number, in which case you've just protected an asset in a way that like is now undervalued. So I'm good either way. Obviously, I would like to get my starting 5. So we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, Dejounte Murray, I think one of the things that made him really appealing for the Pelicans was the contract. This is a franchise that's never paid the luxury tax. I don't think they're cheap. Like, I don't think they're as cheap as their reputation, I guess I would say. Like, when you just look at where their payroll ranks year over year, it's not in the bottom 10 consistently, but there is like a clear ceiling there of they don't want to be a tax team. And Dejounte Murray, 28 million this upcoming year, 30 million, 32 million. Like, I think the comparison of Dejounte Murray is kind of the lead guard version of Brandon Ingram in some ways. I mean, just think about it like this. Brandon Ingram might get $50 million on his next contract, and Dejounte Murray's making 28, 30, and 32. So that's a similar caliber player making $20 million less, per year. I think that's one way of thinking about this deal. One other thing I really like about the Dejounte Murray trade is the competitiveness. I think Dejounte, is a fierce competitor. He definitely wants the ball in close situations, which I think is something the Pelicans frankly need. Like, I'm really hoping we just see Dejounte, Zion pick and rolls when the Pelicans need to score this year. And I just think he's like a guy you can just give the rock to and create something when you really need to on offense. And another thing is the games played. Dejounte Murray plays. And that has been arguably the biggest, it has been the biggest problem with the New Orleans Pelicans over the past 5 years in the Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram partnership. Neither of them play consistently enough. Dejounte Murray, 74 games played 2 seasons ago, 78 games played this past season. Neither of them were ideal seasons. with the Atlanta Hawks, right? Like, they didn't go according to plan. They weren't great years. Sometimes when that happens, NBA players, they find excuses to miss games. Dejounte Murray did not do that, and I like that. We need somebody out there every night. You got to give yourself a chance.
Yeah, he shows up and he's a bit spicy. If you like followed like tweets and stuff during the year, like there's talk all year of splitting him and Trey because the year prior didn't look great. And he just says bring it on. Like it's just like he's just on fire at all times and he'll take anybody that runs in his face. I do want to get into like our perception of him versus what he is over the course of the last few years, because I think there was a version that obviously the Atlanta Hawks thought they were getting when they paid all their first round picks to get him. And there's there's what he really is. And what we value him as at the $29 million number. And I think, he got this defensive stopper guard reputation, really, really high amount of steals when he was with the Spurs. The Spurs were really bad. The Spurs were not a good team. He was playing next to Derek White, though, so he had a nice little backcourt defensive combo. Derek was doing a lot of the creating. Derek was like a 7-8 assists a game guy, and he was taking 6 or 7 threes a game. And Dejounte was more like ISO scorer guy.
He did average 9 assists in that last season with the Spurs.
Yeah, so it was trending. It felt like it was trending towards this dude's really becoming like a defensive stopper, big time assist guy. Like you thought you were getting to this next level. And parts of his game are still changing. Like the defense drops, but everybody's defense in Atlanta is suspect at this point. Especially when a team just doesn't care. And Atlanta has just been a rough ride the last couple of years. And I think all year, everybody knew this Trey Dejounte thing wasn't going to happen. There was, you have new management come in right after the Dejounte Murray trade. And they're not sold on this. This isn't the move they made. So, it's pretty easy to move off of if you're them. So what he is now, the thing that's going to immediately come to mind is taking 40 shots to score 44 points. So, pencil that away. That is a thing. That was a thing. He did shout out a salute to Kobe after that game. But he did also, and you tweeted about this, his 3-point volume per year over the course of the last 5 years has just gone up and up and up. Last year, it was over 200 for the season. And look, that's the version of him we need. We need him to be the guy that shoots threes, generates steals, and can be on ball under pressure. And it doesn't need to be that much more complicated than that. We need to not have to find a release valve in the half court just because like we're getting hounded. And you can watch all year. We struggled with that throughout the regular season. Anybody who had a really, really strong point of attack, go back and look at the early Houston Rockets game. Anybody who's got a really strong point of attack defense gave us real problems. Pushed CJ and BI way up above the 3-point line, took 8, 9, 10 seconds off the shot clock before the play even starts. And you're just not going to get a good possession at that point. And that's the goal of point of attack. That's what you do. You try to just suck clock away. This is going to be the easiest defensive assignment Dejounte Murray's had in his entire career. This is going to be this team with Herb on it, with Trey's size, with Zion bought in defensively, which he was for more than half of the season last year. It's just going to be a better situation defensively with Willie than he's had. So I'm confident that do I think he's an elite defender and he's going to be defensive player of the year? No. Do I think he's going to get an easier assignment? And the combination of scoring and hounding the ball handler is going to be a more straightforward role? I do.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think two of the biggest questions with Dejounte Murray coming to New Orleans, how real was the 3-point shooting last year? His rookie season, he made 9 threes. That was it. I mean, he was pretty close to like a non-3-point shooter when he came into the NBA, and he has made himself into one. Last year, he was at 36% from 3 and more than 7 attempts per game. He made 201 threes. It has been quite a journey for him in terms of his willingness to take and make outside shots in his career has really improved in that area. And then, as you just talked about, how does he defend? the Atlanta Hawks were 22nd and 27th in defense in his 2 seasons with the Hawks. And defense is a team thing. It's not a one guy thing. And they have Trae Young, who's really bad defender. And people seem to really hate playing with him. Like, I can't lie. I love Trae Young coming out of Oklahoma. I really believed in him. Not as I didn't believe in him more than Luka. Like, I thought that was kind of silly, but I really did believe in him. And him getting that Hawks team to the Eastern Conference Finals was like, yes. I don't know. I liked a lot of Trae Young stuff, but everything you read is like people hate playing with this guy. And I think Dejounte Murray is a guy who did not enjoy playing with him. But yes, Dejounte Murray gets a lot of steals. He was part of a defense that was really bad last year. This is going to be probably a good situation for him. I mean, you've got Herb Jones just taking on the toughest assignment every single night. There is, a defensive culture that Willie Green and a lot of these guys they've brought in the past few years have established here, which they probably don't get enough credit for. Like, that is a feather in Willie's cap that he has like established this identity of like, hey, look, we're going to defend. And so you're hoping that Dejounte buys into that and, looks a little bit better, not having to take the most difficult assignment every night. But those are two of the big swing things for me for him in New Orleans.
Yeah, and I think there's some additional like secondary and tertiary things with Dejounte coming for the people that we would think now remain on the roster. Look, I think I have 2 goals for this offseason. I've had 2 goals since last year. We've talked about it more than once. I think we went short on ball handling last year, and we went short on athleticism at the 5. I think we knew that, and we're willing to buy it if the value was there, but we weren't going to push it because we still needed to see, like, what do BI and Zion look like together? That was the ultimate goal. Well, that Band-Aid is being ripped. So now you have a guy that is going to decrease the ball handling burden, period. And it's not like if you compare him and BI to each other, BI is not somebody that sets the table for anybody. And look, I'm not saying that Dejounte truly is either. It's not necessarily his forte that he gets on the ball and like gets into the mid range and doesn't take the shot himself. He's going to do that, and it's going to piss us off sometimes. But he will survive on ball and get around guys in ways that BI cannot. And that is hyper valuable because even if you're not this half court table setter, if you can beat the first guy and an advantage is there, you may take the shot sometimes when we're annoyed. And you know what else you might do? You might find the lob man, or you might find a guy in a corner. And that's the thing that is going to come out of this. And I think, a beneficiary, should he remain on the roster, would be CJ, because now all of a sudden these like victimized tiny backcourts where like CJ and Jose end up together, there's just a lot of ways to avoid that now. You can play Jose next to him. You can play CJ next to him. And you're like, oh yeah, we can survive out here because between Herb size and Dejounte, it's going to be, we can switch into scenarios that we like. We can get you away from the guys that are going to punish you, CJ.
That is a benefit of bringing in Dejounte as opposed to Trae Young or Darius Garland. You can put out Jose out there with you. You put out Hawkins. You can put out CJ in lineups and just feel a little bit better about that than, I mean, imagine CJ and Darius Garland. Like that doesn't work. Let's drill down on this CJ Dejounte fit. I think the Pelicans the Pelicans tried to trade for Dejounte Murray before the trade deadline in February. He's a guy they have wanted for a while. I think at the trade deadline in February, there were some stuff going around about, hey, look, could the Pelicans be looking to get off of CJ's money in a deal? From what I can tell, I think the Pelicans looked at maybe putting CJ in this deal. And while CJ had a very good year last year, I think, look, he's under contract for the next 2 years at more than $30 million. And this is kind of a new economic reality where you only want to give big money in a lot of instances to the elite players. So I personally am a big fan of CJ, and I think he's very good for the Pelicans, but I also just think his contract is viewed throughout the NBA as not great. And hey, look, it is what it is. And so CJ and Dejounte, the Pelicans are going to try to make this work. And look, I think it's possible they start together, and I think it's possible CJ comes off the bench next season. And I would love to know how CJ feels about that because you've heard some of that stuff, but it's a different thing going to a guy who, had this incredible year last year and saying like, "Hey, can you do this for us?"
It's not just do this for us though. Like I think CJ has proven to be an incredibly practical and an incredibly intelligent person. It would shock me is if he is ignorant of the fact that this is the future of his career, and he's probably known that for a couple of years, that like the later phase of his career is the come off the bench off ball shooter, cook backup lineups, and I think he'd be really successful in that. Like the economic reality did kind of change overnight. The first apron and the first apron hard cap and the second apron is not the old tax picture. And you're seeing teams really, really terrified of what that looks like right now. And like you said, it makes it so that you don't really want to flirt with the aprons if you're one of a team like us that's not in contention yet. You don't want to flirt with the aprons until you know you want to be in the apron. So it makes it harder to say, I'm going to have guys close to the max that are on my roster for now because, I'll be able to move them to somebody else and it won't be a problem. No, you're going to have to pay someone to take them, and you're going to have to specifically pay one of the cap space teams to do it. And there's like no way around that now because of the aprons. Nobody else is going to mess around and try and do like a reclamation couple of years on $30 million a year. So yeah, I think the CJ that we saw through like games 10 through 50 of last year was a really, really good version of him. It was a lot of corner stuff. It was a lot of driving baseline. It was a lot of very, very fast, catches the ball, dribbles twice, takes a shot, makes a pass. It was much less constipated on ball. I have to dribble past the guy. And when it was that, it looked great. And he was shooting really well. It was still his average for most of the year. He was still over 20 points, shooting really, really well from three. He was the pull-up king. And that still, and he was also like I think somebody just posted, he was like in shot clock situations under 4 seconds. He shot the highest percentage, or Pelicans shot the highest percentage in the league. And that was because of him. He made, and we said this last year, it felt like in every important moment, when the Pelicans needed something to stem the tide or needed to end a run, the guy that went and got a bucket was CJ. So he's not dead.
Let me ask you this. Let's just say, and I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just say CJ becomes the sixth man in like game 10 next year. Let's say they try it and they decide, hey, we're gonna make CJ the sixth man. What does that mean for Jordan Hawkins? What does that mean for Jose Alvarado?
I think that means that there's, Jose, I have a deep affection for Jose as a player. I'm not getting attached to this thing where like he has to have some sort of seismic role. He is still a 5'10" guard that is only playable in certain situations. I love his defensive intensity. I love the energy he brings. I'm going to want to try to find a way to get that on the floor. It probably pushes him into not a TJ McConnell role of last year, but one of 2 or 3 years ago, when McConnell was struggling to get on the floor most nights, unless somebody got hurt. I think that becomes Jose's reality. I think Hawkins, I think they're going to try. I think we've kind of flipped vision here a little bit, and you might feel differently about this, but Fred Vinson leaves, and all of a sudden, my draft picks, my second round draft pick, and now my like UDFA guys that are coming in are guys that can already shoot. And the question is defensive, and the question is learning other things. And I wonder how much we're going to now lean into the shooters need to be on the floor, and you need to get them to defend. So Hawkins needs to have minutes. Trey needs to be a starter, and we've got to figure out ways to make that work. So I think Hawkins is going to get a role either way. I think Jose is the one that suffers because as much as we love him, I can't get attached to $2 million players that are 5'10" because the league does not value them. So I would love for him to stay here. He may end up being like a TJ McConnell too, where he doesn't really move around. And in 2 years, we see him like back in the rotation again. He might have that kind of career. So I'm not going to worry so much about him. Hawkins, I feel like him and CJ, like very similar in terms of the way that you're going to deploy them. Hawkins maybe a little less so because he has less versatility. Yeah, I think Hawkins probably is going to be fine. Dyson's leaving. We don't know what's happening with Najee yet. Like there was a lot of minutes with those two. I think Jose is the one that suffers.
One of the things I'm kind of watching here is, a defining characteristic of the Pelicans the last 2 years is just all these wings that they'd put on the floor. I mean, this incredible wing depth. It looks like there's a chance that could be, depleted a little bit in this upcoming season. Dyson Daniels going out, Najee Marshall, I'm sure is going to have suitors in free agency. We'll see what happens there. And then if they move Brandon Ingram, that's three of your wings who could play multiple positions right there going out. So this could feel like a different team than the very wingy Pelicans teams of the past 2 years here. We'll have to see. The Najee thing would hurt. I mean, Najee was really good for the Pelicans last year.
It's always going to. Him and Jose are the emotional core of the team. Like they're the guys they're the underdogs you root for, that feel like family. And if and when it ever happens, look, we thought Najee might go at the deadline last year, and I think a couple teams made a mistake in not doing it. Royce O'Neal just got like $44 million. I'm sorry, Najee's better than Royce O'Neal at this point, like today. And he just got a multi-year contract for over $40 million. So to me, like for me personally, that's my watermark for Najee, but the league didn't say that at the deadline. The league valued Royce O'Neal. So maybe he just doesn't have that value, and it's going to be the DFSs and the Royce O'Neals that get money, and he won't, but it really feels like he should get $10 to $12 million a year from someone. But we'll see. We're going to have to see what happens. If it's less than that, man, if I losing Dyson does make you kind of want to get Najee back. Like, and it doesn't even fit super clean because you need, like what you just talked about. Hawkins needs to have minutes. Hawkins needs to be playing. Jose is probably going to suffer in his role. Najee could do a little bit of guard stuff and could take a lot of defensive assignments and make your life easy, especially in those secondary units. Not having Dyson kind of makes me want to have Najee, but we're just going to have to see what the money is. So we shall see. But yeah, they're the guys you get attached to. Najee is the guy that you're like, it's going to break your heart when he goes. Look, JV is already breaking my heart. Like JV, Najee, Jose, all of them. We're tied to all of them.
It's going to kill me if Jonas Valanciunas ends up going to the Lakers here and is playing next to AD.
Very possible.
So let's just say hypothetically, the 4 of the 5 Pelican starters next year are Dejounte Murray, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Zion Williamson. What is the right type of center to put next to that group?
I want the shooter by any means. Like, give me the Brook Lopez Band-Aid. If that's what it has to be. It has got to be somebody that is not just sitting in the post. Just because, like, Dejounte is, like, when I say stylistically, he's like BI, like, everything's driven off of dribbling guys past the three-point line. Now, he can relocate more often than BI now. He relocates back to the three-point line after he gets a guy falling backwards, and he'll take the three. But he does like to dribble into the mid-range, and he does like to get in there, and that's Zion's space. And I know that Zion can be successful in any version of this, but for once, and for the load on his body and everything we have seen, you have got to start making these possessions easier. I just can't. It just can't be standstill. If you're not going to be like, look, I know our team seemingly doesn't value Wendell Carter all that much. Even him as a Band-Aid, like if they don't love him, is still better than taking just a post center. Like I just, because he can play out of the dunker spot, back out to the corner, make the shot from the corner. He does hold down the space, the places you need him to be on the floor to leave the paint open. So yeah, it leans me more that direction and away from the Jared Allen stuff.
What about there's a popular name going around in NBA circles is Walker Kessler right now. I mean, Walker Kessler is not he doesn't give you much spacing on the offensive end, obviously, just an enormous rim protector who is on a cheap contract for the next 2 years.
who also had like kind of a down year after his rookie year. That
Yeah.
second year kind of came and bit him in the butt, and he's crying a little bit right now about the direction of the Jazz and how high on their priority list he is, and that's fine. No, I not for me. That's one of those cool like, oh, upside value contract, yeah. No, I have to spend assets to get him. I don't even know if he's going to pan out. And stylistically, if he does pan out, he's not even the one that fits us. So yeah, it's a weird machination. And I don't know how you acquire him, like how much it would cost to get him, because I can't imagine the Jazz are ready to sell low on him. Like if you're picking him up because he's upset and he needs to get out of there, and you're taking a swing on low value, sure. Do I think Danny Ainge lets anybody away for low value? No.
When I asked the Pelicans specifically about Walker Kessler, I was told he's not going to be traded, and I don't know, maybe that will change. There's a lot of posturing going on right now, but that was the word for them. Last thought I got is I think David Griffin has, amassed talent, but I do think one of the criticisms that's legit is the Pelicans, I think, have kind of just smashed talent together without really worrying about fit. And I think part of this offseason is fixing fit around Zion, right? There are talented, good pieces around Zion. It's just not optimal fit. And I think this summer is about fitting those pieces. And we just talked about earlier in this podcast. Hey, look, the Pelicans kind of looked at putting CJ's contract in this Dejounte Murray deal, and they didn't. And it seems like we're headed towards Brandon Ingram being moved. I don't want to say it's 100%, but it seems like we're heading that way. I mean, there could have been a world where CJ and Brandon were both headed out this summer. That should tell you something, right?
And it aligns with kind of all the verbiage we got prior. We got that end of the season, that the first time ever that we had an end of season presser that sounded like it told, or not even presser. I think it was just the media availability after exit interviews where somebody told us the words, "We've seen enough." Like, I didn't need to hear anything else. That was the most definitive thing I have heard judging BI and Zion together since they have been together. It sounded like, yeah, we don't want to keep doing this. So I'm just going to let my eyes, I'm not the one that's going to report things on here. I am not reporting anything, but I don't think any logical basketball person is like, oh yeah, they really want to keep BI now. And also the idea that like you just like keep him and farm the asset through the year. He does not make sense with Dejounte Murray. He doesn't. If he ends up on a way lower contract and it's like just a pure asset play, the day that he is tradable, he should be gone. But like, if you do extend him, you're married to him for a little bit. So it would need to be a pretty low number if you're going to be functional this year, or you'd probably have to look to move CJ off to make a major change this year. My big question is the center, though. Like, there are two holes right now in my entire roster. I do not have a starting center, period. Do not have one. I do not have a backup center. I am hard pressed to believe that Yves Missi is either of those. And if he is, that would be interesting. I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should look back to Derek Favors and Jackson Hayes. And as much as we tried to not correlate Yves to Jackson Hayes, Jax got way over his skis by getting too much playing time because we went short on bigs when Derek Favors was here. I do not want to see that again. That year, we praised Derek Favors when he came back. It's like, oh, look at the plus minus when Derek Favors plays. There was a reason. It was because Jax played when he didn't. And it wasn't that Derek was incredible. It was that Jax was bad. And I just don't want to see Missi thrown into a situation like that where he's like playing the minutes you need him to be good, especially out the gate. He's got so much work to do.
One of the underrated factors in that 2019-20 team getting off to a terrible start was Derek Favors dealt with personal stuff. He dealt with the death of his mother, and he missed a lot of time, and it just required the Pelicans to throw Jackson Hayes out there way too early, and he wasn't ready. And obviously Zion wasn't playing at that time too, and it was rough. It was rough. All right, Adam, free agency. starts 6 p.m. tonight. I don't know, maybe we'll see the Pelicans like add a minimum center, something like that. But we will talk again later this week. We will convene in a few days, but I felt like we had to get together this morning to talk about Dejounte. Good deal for the Pelicans.
Yeah, a little coffee talk this morning. Peanuts, neither a pea nor a nut. Discuss.
Thank you guys for listening, and we will talk again soon.